All right, thank you all for joining us for the Resume versus CV workshop. Joining us today is Dr. Darren Vetter, Career and Professional Development Specialist, UNLV Career Services, and TGA. They will be guiding us through the distinguishing resumes and curriculum vitaes, including how they are different and ways to effectively create and use both resumes and CVs. I'm going to hand it over to them to get us started.
All right, great intro. Good evening, everybody. Like he mentioned, ask questions if you got them, and you can just ask them during the program as I'm talking. There's a lot of little parts and pieces that we'll go over. So this is about your resume, and then it's about a curriculum vitae, and I'll also show you guys an example of a curriculum vitae that I got from, it's from one of our VPs at UNLV that's super interesting. So we'll get down to that here in a little bit. So what is a resume? It's typically going to always be one page. It can be 2 pages, but it's projecting your identity. So it's your relevant academic, professional, volunteer, and leadership experience. So what is not a curriculum vitae comes up a lot. So, or what is not a resume, it is a curriculum vitae. So the curriculum vitae is an academic document that focuses on teaching, research, service, and relevant experience to your discipline of study. So the CV is much longer. I think like most CVs that I've looked at, for like different VPs and different people like that come to campus that are looking for jobs like dean and things like that, they can be anywhere from 20 to 30. And I'll show you one later that's actually over 60 pages long. So they can be quite amazing and quite impressive. So let me go this. All right. So resume sections. So typical resume sections, contact information on top. So education, we always like to see education next after the contact information, put it on top. After that comes work experience, awards and activities, volunteer, and then skills and technology. And it's kind of up to you. There's a lot of flexibility built in a resume. If you want to move around experience, if you want to move around awards and activities, you'll see later what we do with a lot of students that don't have a lot of experience is under education, we had relevant coursework. This works really well too, especially for like engineering students and biology students and chemistry students. Some of the courses that they take with labs are just amazing. So that's a part of that we try to focus on. So design strategies, keep it pretty simple. So fonts, always try to tell people use a very simple font. Veranda's pretty clear, Arial's very clear. Times New Roman gets a little busy, but Arial's one of my favorites for resumes. You're going to bold job titles and section headings. Alignment, you always want to have the dates aligned on the right side of the paper, and then margins can go to a 1/2 inch. So one thing that we see, and you'll see this later on some bullet points, I've seen bullet points before that are like 3 or 4 lines long. And I'm like, 3 or 4 lines long is a paragraph. It's not a bullet point. So we look for things like that. Aim for consistency is a big thing too, because you want it to look really clean and neat. Avoid templates. So I see a lot of resumes, a lot of students come in and they build a resume on Google. That's great because Google's easy, but guess what's bad? Google likes to use color and columns and images and all these things that are absolutely horrible for a resume. And I'll explain a little bit more of that later. So contact information, it's not a legal document, so use your name of choice. You can include pronouns if you're comfortable doing that. Address and location, you no longer need to put a physical address on your resume. Just the city and state is fine. Professional email address, you should include your first and last name. Your UNLV email is always going to be a safe bet. When I do this in person for a class, this is always kind of fun. I always ask students, hey, you got to have a phone number, right, on your resume. And then I always ask students, have you ever had a voicemail that hasn't been set up before? And I usually get a lot of hands because some people just don't bother to set up a voicemail. So you want to make sure you set that up for applying for jobs and doing things like that. So it's going to provide information, help employers contact you. It presents a first impression, and you want to locate it at the top of the page. You can put it in the header section, but if you go to a 1/2 inch margin of the paper, you don't usually have to mess with the headers and get into all that song and dance. So here's our contact sample. So contact information sample, pretty simple, right? Joe Smith, phone number, Joe Smith's email address, and then Las Vegas, Nevada. So I'll mention this early today to you guys. So the little black bar that goes up and down that's separating the phone number and the email and then separating Las Vegas, Nevada, that is the key above the return key. The reason why we use this, I'll mention this more a little bit later, is that most resumes are scanned by a computer for companies. When the computer scans it, we learn that if there's a space in front and behind that little black bar going up and down, the computer will record that and then pause and then go to the next one, record it, pause, and go to the next one. So it's a great little trick. I didn't learn it. Somebody else smarter than me learned it, but it's something that we have throughout the resume. So education section, emphasize your educational background, any formalized training. It demonstrates to employers that your education is very relevant to the job. The education part helps your resume stand out. So, and like we mentioned, in most cases, it goes at the top. If you want to add things to education, you'll see this on the presentation. You can add your GPA on there. If you speak multiple languages, you can add that up in that area. And as I mentioned with coursework too, you can add relevant coursework also to the document. So then here's an education sample. So pretty simple. Bachelor of Arts, that same little key above the return key that we use, they separated that. GPA, the dates are over on the right. University of Nevada, Las Vegas is under it. Associates of Arts, College of Southern Nevada, relevant coursework, they listed technical variety, advanced public speaking. So when we prepare a resume or we help students with a resume, we always bold the degree and we'd never bold the school. And everybody's like, well, why don't you bold the school? The school's important. Guess what? Employers don't care. They want to see that you have a degree. They don't really care where the degree's from. When it scans the resume, most job descriptions will say minimum requirement, bachelor's degree or bachelor's degree in something. That's what it's looking for. So that's what you want to have. You also want to spell out the degrees. You don't want to abbreviate like BA, so Bachelor of Arts. You don't want to do that. You want to spell those out. It makes it look a lot better, and it's better for the computer when it scans it. So another sample here, Bachelor of Science Engineering, Bachelor of Science Psychology. So a dual bachelor's degree, those are both in bold, separated by our same little key above the return key. And then here they added 2 languages, Spanish and Portuguese. And then I'll mention this too, on the right side of the column where we put in the dates, students you don't have to put things like estimated graduation date or possible graduation date or anything like that. You can make it really simple and put May 2026. We get it. You're going to graduate in May of 2026. The computer gets it when it scans it, and people will get it when they read it. The other reason why too that we bold the education and we bold the degrees and not the university is that we just had a big giant career fair a couple weeks ago at Thomas and Mack, which was really great. We had a great turnout. When you hand your resume physically to somebody like a recruiter at a career fair, they only have about 10 seconds to look at your resume. So you want the name to stand out, you want the degree to stand out, and you want your job titles to stand out. So that's another little trick that we kind of incorporate into this. So here's another example. So we got dual bachelors again. This one added a minor. So we got a minor in women and gender studies. The dates over on the right. And then this one took advantage and added technical skills in this section of the document, which is totally fine. So if you look at the technical skills here, we got Adobe Suites, iMovie, Canva, Photoshop. Those are all marketing tools. So they're emphasizing their resume with Bachelor of Arts in Marketing. They still have a Bachelor of Science, but they're using the technical skills to add in all those things that fit right in with that degree. That's the Bachelor of Arts in Marketing. So I would say this student having the resume look like this, they're going towards the marketing side, not so much the Bachelor of Science side. Any questions yet, or everybody good? All right. So then what counts as experience? So when you think of experience, experience can be a whole bunch of different things. So you want to demonstrate your most relevant work, and you want to start with the most recent and then go out from there. If you're older and you've worked longer, you don't have to put more than 10 years of experience on a resume ever. You're going to see that when you apply for jobs electronically. They want the last 10 years. They don't care about anything past that. So what counts? Jobs, internships, volunteer positions, teaching and research assistantships to UTA, graduate assistants, leadership opportunities, memberships, extracurriculars, and then project experience. So any activities that involve the qualifications that are needed for that job are kind of what counts and what's relevant. And don't worry, you'll see a couple examples coming up here. So key components, the job or the position title is very important. The company, the organization, it depends where you're at and what you've been done on location. So I see a lot of resumes on people that are from Vegas. They've been here their whole life. They do not have to put Las Vegas, Nevada on everything. It already says Las Vegas, Nevada on top, and it says the school. So location's kind of up to you on if you want to add location. The dates of employment or participation in the project too. So the dates are very important. And then the description. So in the description, it's going to be achievements, projects, and these are all quantifiable duties and responsibilities. And we'll look at more of those here in a section too. So the experience is to describe your skills. Like, what do you bring to that company? You're trying to get a job with them. So what do you bring? So you don't want an information dump. So this is where I kind of made a joke earlier about the paragraph, 4 lines of a bullet point. I've seen people write out information that goes on and on and on and on, and it basically tells me nothing. So if you give me some brief bullet points that says you work in a fast food industry, you handle 400 customers a shift and you manage $6,000 in cash. That tells me something, as opposed to customer service, cashier at a food place, whatever. It doesn't tell you a lot. So you want to focus on the achievements and the experience, and then indicate the qualifications that of what you're applying to. So this is going to help your resume stand out. It's going to be like, when people are going to look at it, they're going to be like, hey, this is awesome. They have all this experience. And it kind of establishes your unique professional identity for what you're trying to do. So then we deal with this a lot. So understated versus appropriate emphasis. So on the left, and these are all real, these came out of some resumes a few years ago when we built all this fun stuff. So number one, recorded daily sales and documents. So what does that tell you when you read that? It kind of tells you nothing. I'm not being mean. I'm just trying to be honest. It tells you nothing. On the right, recorded $1,000 in daily sales, constant engagement with customers, relationship building. It's telling you something relevant. Number two is one of my favorite ones, answered phones. On the right side, utilize effective communication, organizational skills to manage call volume of 25 clients per day. So that's even more impressive. And wipe tables, we left this on because we like it. It came from the pandemic. So wipe tables, adhere to state public health sanitizing tables, creating public image for restaurant led to a 5% increase in sales. So on the bottom left over there, it says action skills plus project problems plus results. And so this is where you can really have good emphasis on your resume and have good information on what you're showing on these bullet points. So tailoring your resume. So the applicant tracking system software. So this is a computer system. UNLV uses this system. You'll find it right now about 90 to 95% of companies across the United States use it. When you have your resume, it's scanned by a computer system. The computer system is comparing your resume to the job posting. So when you look at a job posting, it's going to say like preferred qualifications, general qualifications. It's such a pain. I hate telling students and alumni this, but you do really have to tailor a resume for every job you're applying for, because you want it to match as many words as it can. So when the resume gets scanned by the computer system, it's looking for matches to what's on the job description. This is where I go back to resumes with color, resumes with pictures, resumes with columns, resumes with diagrams. When the applicant tracking software gets these, I kid you not, it kicks them out. So if it can't scan it and it doesn't know what's going on, it's not even going to bother to look at it. That's going to kick you out of the possibility of getting an interview or even getting recognized for that job. So those are things to consider also. So review the job posting. That's why you want to pay close attention to what it is, identify your strongest matches, and then tailor those descriptions. So then tips for success, 80% of the language should match the description for the job. Organize the heading strategically, cut out all the fluff, and then give yourself enough time to write and edit descriptions. So give yourself enough time to really work on it and make sure you put the effort into it. So honors and activities, this can be a really good one too. So your participation in relevant events, honors you've achieved, it can be described as awards, scholarships, memberships, extracurricular activities. I get a lot of students that come in that are freshmen. So when we have freshmen, we tell them kind of the opposite. You guys are graduate students, so you've had a whole different set of experience than a freshman. But freshmen, I tell them to leave those things on there. If you were like on student council in high school, or if you were like the team captain of a football team or whatever, leave those on there, because you've only started your first year at UNLV. For graduate students, you have a whole different set of awards and honors, especially things like Dean's List. If you're like a president of a student organization, if you've done any other involvement with UNLV, like research or anything like that, that goes under honors and activities, because that can give you a lot of recognition when you're applying for jobs. So keep those things in mind for sure. So then here's a couple different approaches to doing this. So the minimalist approach, so Harry Potter Club UNLV, very simple. We got the date over on the right, January 2022, I think 23. So then the elaborate approach has much more information. So President, National Society of Black Engineers, UNLV, organized the first national meeting held in Las Vegas for 3,000 attendees, increased membership organization by 30% through digital outreach. So this one on the bottom is a great example too, because it's using quantitative data. So when you read both of these, the one on the bottom really stands out and it looks really good. So another thing to consider. So then, as I mentioned, awards, scholarships to memberships, there's different ways you can use some creativity when you list this. So Millennium Scholarship lists the dates on the right, Dean's List UNLV, the dates are listed on the right, Employee of the Month Starbucks, that's cool, I like Starbucks. So that's listed on there too, you got the dates over there. And then professional memberships on resumes, and this will become even more important on a curriculum vitae, but on a resume too, this can look really good if you're applying for a job that's associated with that. So this is Association of Healthcare Professional Student Member, that's on there. If you're applying for a job at any healthcare industry, a dentist's office, a doctor's office, a hospital, you'll want to keep that on there. And then we have Spectrum UNLV secretary that's on there also. So things are consider stuff like that when you're applying. It depends what you're applying for. The professional memberships can really stand out for y'all. So then this is hard to see. Can you guys see this okay? But this is like one of our favorite resumes. So if you look at the design of this resume, so the name is in bold on top and it's in 16-point font. The rest of the document is in 11-point font. You don't see any all caps anywhere. So everything is written in like normal punctuation. The headings are all written out and they're bold and underlined. So if I'm at a career fair and I get this resume handed to me, in about 10 seconds, I can look, okay, so I'm talking to Anne, she's got a PhD in biological sciences. Let's see her employment: laboratory supervisor, lab assistant, medical lab tech, did a lot, internship, Las Vegas Valley Water District, and then spent time volunteering. So in about 12 seconds of looking through this, I can get all the main stuff. I can say, hey, this person's had a few different positions. They got a PhD. They have volunteer experience and listed 3 of those. That's a lot. So I should immediately be impressed by looking at this resume because of everything that's on there. It's very OCD for a reason. So there's 5 bullet points on each one of those lines or on each one of those jobs. But what we also look at doing for resumes is you want to use action verbs for the bullet points. So words that you can see on here: manage, create, organize, conduct, assisted, labeling. So you're using action verbs, and that's what you really want to push, is having action verbs on the resume too, because that makes things just stand out even more. It's more emphasis that's going on that information. And then the last part I'll show you on here is technology and skills. So if you look across the bottom, that whole group of information is actually centered, and it's using that same little key above the return key to separate that. But by doing it like this across the bottom of the paper, I think I have like 8 that are on this example, or 9. I could have added more. I had room for a line below that. So I really could have added about 18 to 20 under technology and skills on the bottom. A big thing that keeps coming up lately, especially here in Las Vegas, Nevada, is soft skills. We have companies that are looking for employees with simple things: time management, organizational skills. There is a missing part in Las Vegas right now for employment, looking for managers that can manage 10 people. Those kind of people, they need to have time management skills. They need to have organizational skills. They need to know those things on how to direct people. So those are things that we're missing so far. So this example too, if you guys have ever seen me for a meeting or whatever, I'm emailing you this example. I'm sending it to you in Microsoft Word, and all you got to do is go in there and change this information to yours. It's already formatted. It's already built. So if you guys need that, send me an email and let me know. So we have several resources for resume writing. The UNLV Career Toolkit is online on the Career Services website. Part of that toolkit is under that you see the vault for resume samples and the virtual resume review. So the resume sample vault literally has 100 resume samples. They're categorized by different industries. So accounting, we have accounting in there. It goes on to computer science. It has engineering. It has a bunch. There's 100 of them in there. Then writing your resumes, scheduling an appointment with Career Services, resume design tips, tailoring the resume, and then optimizing it for the applicant tracking system. So there was a ton of resources available for all the students. And then if you're ever in the office, come by our office too. We have a bunch of career handbooks that we just came out with again last year. They were very popular before the pandemic. They kind of passed away during the pandemic, and now we've revived them and they're back. And so there's a bunch of those too that have a bunch of resume writing information on there. So any questions on the resume? It's kind of boring. It's a resume, but it is what it is.
Is there any time, Dr. Vetter, that let's say this person is very experienced, can they have like more than a page, like maybe 3 pages of resume, or does that kind of bore the person that's looking at the resume? Because I seen that before.
It may be too much, and that's where we always kind of use a 10-year limit too. But if they've had that much experience, they really want to condense it. I've seen people have a resume where they've had 2 or 3 jobs at the same company, and that pushes it to 2 or 3 pages, like you're saying. Condense it down. A 2-page resume is not a bad thing. So we never tell students you have a problem with a 2-page. A 3-page is too much. And because of also when you go to a career fair, if you give somebody a 3-page resume at a career fair, they're probably going to hand it back to you and say, they just don't have time. So you're looking for more condensed. The funny thing too, the word resume actually means summary. That's what the real meaning of that word is. So resume came across, it's a summary of your experience, your skills, and what it is. A cover letter will support your resume typically. That's what the cover letter is written for, to support it. And the curriculum vitae then is a whole different thing because it's supposed to be everything that you've done.
Thank
Great
you.
question, sir.
Thank
I
you.
like it. Anything else from the group? All right, let's go to part two. So a curriculum vitae, if I pronounce it correctly, I just like calling it a vita. I don't know why. So the curriculum vitae. So this has got several different parts to it. So it's way more different than a resume. So it's more detailed. It's designed to provide a full history of your academic credentials. So it's typically an appropriate way longer. So individuals that are seeking fellowships, grants, postdoctoral positions, research positions, so anything academic, but where we're also encouraging students to build a CV also is in the sciences. So if you're a biology major, you're a chemistry major, it's typical that you get involved in so many labs. You might do research with professors. There's things that you get connected to that can really add to a CV. Also, we have a lot of students that do a really great job. They work with professors on different projects in the sciences, and the professor publishes a paper. And then with that paper published, the professor adds that student onto that paper. So they get a publication out of it too, which is a big part of curriculum vitae, not so much a part of a resume too. So that's why we encourage the sciences a lot to go to the direction of a curriculum vitae as opposed to a resume. And then grad school applications, those typically request a curriculum vitae also. So get advice on this. When you're creating a curriculum vitae, get advice from current colleagues, ask about the formatting, but also ask about relevant topics. Come see us at Career Services. Like I said, I'm going to show you an example of a crazy one here in a little bit. But yeah, always ask around. Ask for your professors. If you can go to office hours with your professors, ask them, say, hey, I was curious. Did a thing about curriculum vitae. Can you tell me like what's on yours? Because some people use a whole lot of different creativity on them, on what they add and the sections that they add to. So there is no perfect resume and there is no perfect curriculum vitae too, which kind of gives it a little bit of fun on the creativity side. So what it is, it's a comprehensive statement, educational background, teaching and research experience. So it's used when applying for academic positions at four-year institutions for sure. You want to tailor it for the specific position, use keywords and similar word choice. And then it's more description for experiences. So you could focus more on achievements and experience that indicate your qualifications too. So you have way more flexibility because there is 0-page limit. So when you mentioned the 3-page resume, that could be converted easily into probably a 5-page curriculum vitae just by adding different sections to it that could just make it stand out even more. So unlike the resume, this is describing the things that you have accomplished too. So when you talk about projects on a curriculum vitae, you'll describe what the project was, who you worked with, what you did, and you'll talk more about the results of the project because the results can be even more important. So as I mentioned, there's no page limit. Typically they're around 4 to 16 pages. And language or technical skills can also add a lot to the qualifications. So on a curriculum vitae, under language and technical skills, you can add a whole lot more information and get really creative with that on how you put that information together. So sections, this isn't even all of them, but it's filling up the whole page on the PowerPoint. So heading is going to be the same thing, contact information. You're going to have your heading, which can be a paragraph description about what you're doing, what you're pursuing, education information too. And this can be, still don't list high school, but education too, for like a lot of our professors, they might have been a professor that went and taught a class online somewhere while they're teaching classes at another location. So education section on the education side can get really big. There could be a lot. Recent and current research is very important too. So the research section is super important on where you're applying for a job to. This can be listed in bullet points. It can be listed out in a paragraph. But if you're very involved in some research project, so say you're in a biological science and you're researching a stem cell program, when you're talking about that, whoever you're applying for the job with, they're going to want to know what that is. So part of the curriculum vitae that gets tied back into education so much is that when they're hiring professors for different positions around the university, they're also looking for people that can get them money. So money on the grant side, money from the state government, money from the federal government, because universities are always looking for funding for different programs, especially research. UNLV is a great example. We attained R1 research status too. So we're an R1 research institution. So we are always looking for more funding that we can get for anything, but mostly for research projects and things that are really relevant. So relevant experience, so still put your work experience in there, put the same thing with the bullet points on the resume. Grants received, as I just mentioned, the money, that's a big one. If you've received several thousands of dollars in grants, that's going to look really good for where you're applying to next. Publications is a big section for a lot of people too. A lot of people publish several different articles. The presentations, so presentation can have a couple different sections. It can be an oral presentation, it could be a poster presentation, and then this also goes into when they attend conferences. So conferences I couldn't even fit on here because we don't have enough room, but conferences are a big one. So I have people that will do a presentation at a conference. That's two different listings. One goes under a conference that they attended. The second one is a listing of the same conference, but the name and the title of the presentation that they did. Another section of honors and awards, as we talked about earlier. Then qualifications and skills can be greatly expanded too. So you can really include a whole lot of different qualifications, and you could greatly expand the skill section too. So a lot of people on a curriculum vitae too, if they're a professor, so what looks really good on a curriculum vitae is I was a professor, I taught this English class, it had 120 students. They'll list that. With that, they could list, as during the course of this class, the students read 4 books, they produced 2 papers and took 2 tests. So you're adding that information on there to kind of really grow the document, but give more information. Then professional organizations, you'll see a lot of these on curriculum vitaes where there's a lot. So there's people that are involved in several different organizations, and this can really expand that document. Also, community involvement is a good one too. So community involvement can also be listed as volunteer. But we end up with professors all over the place that will spend time. They'll go to like high schools and speak to high school classes. They'll be part of like different presentations with different organizations around a town, around a community. And so that's community involvement, and that's a big deal. And that's something that should be really well shown on your curriculum vitae. And then certifications too. So whatever certifications that you have, whether they're through LinkedIn or they're through outside sources or whatever, you want to list all your certifications. And then references. This is one of the key differences from a resume. So I have a lot of people always ask me on a resume, they're like, well, I have references. Where do I list them at? And I was like, you don't. So on a curriculum vitae, they're typically always going to want 3 references. And references are very simple. You want a person's name, you want their job title, their company, phone number, email. You no longer need a home address or a work address. You just need those 5 aspects and list those on the references too. And that helps the document out a lot. So then here's a couple examples. So we just made these 1-page examples kind of show the differences. So I got John Smith on the left. I got Jane Doe on the right. We use creative names. They're so great. So you can see that John Smith is very similar to the resume that we looked at earlier. The way everything is bold and set up. John Smith is a little bit different. We bolded the dates, which is okay. On the right, so this is a 1-page of Jane Doe's curriculum vitae. So you can see how different it is. It's got different borders around the headings. It doesn't matter. This is getting read by a human being, not so much as a computer reading it. The heading is different, how Jane Doe put the information on top of it, but it goes to research interest. So that becomes very important on what is this person interested in researching? And then we have research experience. So we have all this information here that gets added to the document. Internship experience, leadership, publications, and conferences, they added those together. And then we still have technology and skills on the bottom. And then we got professional associations. So you can see just by kind of looking at those headings, and don't worry, the one I'm going to show you here a little bit later has got a lot more than this. So, but you can just see those differences between these 2 documents. So then that's all the main part of it. Now I got some propaganda before we look at the resume. Is there any other questions? I think I'm going way fast too.
That's okay. That's not a problem.
All right, let me zip through these, and then I'll have to go back and I'll show you the big curriculum vitae, the one that's kind of chaos. So here's my propaganda. We already scheduled our career fair events for next year. So February 13th is Prepare for the Fair. That's a resume review. The 14th, we're doing one in the new Student Diversity Lounge that we really like over the Student Union. So we're going to do those back to back. So 9:30 to 3:30 on the 13th, and then 10 to 2 on the 14th. We're doing our employer panel again that we've done 4 semesters in a row now. So that'll be at the Goldfield Room on the 15th. And then February 28th, we're going to be at Thomas and Mack again for our career fair. I will be again looking for ambassadors for the career fair. So if any of you students are available, it's going to be on a Wednesday again. I need you from 7:30 in the morning till about 10 o'clock or 10:30. So if anybody can be a student ambassador, we'll send that same information out again and disperse it. So if any students are looking for it, we'll do the same thing. We're going to give you a cool t-shirt, and then we're going to also give you a $50 credit at the bookstore. So we'll be looking for those again next spring. And then everybody knows about Handshake and the student job board. So all the on-campus jobs should be published on Handshake. We're trying to get all the internships published on Handshake. They should all be getting on there, getting better. And then the same with graduate assistant positions. They should be on there also. And then if you haven't been to our wonderful building where we're all at all the time, so 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, we have new fall hours that are just open hours for students to walk in, 10 to 2 on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then there's the phone number and the email. So social media, I didn't fix this one. I was supposed to put X instead of the Twitter. I messed it up. I didn't have time. Darn it, I forgot. Anyway, we're on all the social media. There's a lot more on Instagram that they've been posting lately, a little bit on Facebook. Yeah, I left a little bird on there. Now I feel bad. I like a little bird though. So then that's it for that. So any other questions before I go back and share the other one?
I guess if you guys have any questions, please unmute yourselves and you can ask questions. Don't be shy.
And I can still load the other one while they're getting ready. It's all good. All right. So let me try
Okay.
this again.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
You said back when we were talking about resumes that 80% of the language of your resume should fit the job description. Could you explain what you mean by that?
So they want the language of the resume to match the job description. So when you look at a job description, so if the job description is using things that are information like, so be able to direct and manage 10 employees, be able to communicate with customers and vendors. So when they have language like that, that's when you're wanting to try to match that up the best that you possibly can. I know it seems like it's kind of difficult and seems kind of wonky to do, but it's really not. The other thing too is when you tie in the words of the resume to the job description, you look at like the qualifications, because it'll say here's the qualifications that you want. It'll always say like preferred qualifications, and that's what you're also looking for, also to match those.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. That was great. Great question. All right. So how did that work? Did that work? Can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right. So hopefully this works. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try. So this is a curriculum vitae. Oh, it does work. Okay, perfect. So this came, I took all the identification off of it. So it came from a person that works at UNLV. So when we talk about all the things that we just talked about, this is the best example in the world to look at. So when you think about, well, what's in there and how much information. So if you just start with this is the table of contents. Oh, I was wrong earlier. I said 64 pages. I think it's 68 pages. So when you think about this, and this is an academic person that works at UNLV. So when you think about like all the things that you can include in a curriculum vitae and how much information's on it, it's got great page numbers on it. So professional positions, education, honors and awards. So honors and awards goes from page 3 to page 7. That's 4 pages of honors and awards. But when you think about like education and what's included, PhD student supervision, master student supervision, graduate student committee memberships. So that's on a whole page. Professional staff supervisory activity, that's on a page. Undergraduate student project supervisor, so that's got 5 pages of undergraduate student project supervision. So you think about 5 pages of this, that is a ton of activity and a ton of things that they've done. And then you get the publication, you have a publication summary, journals, referred conference papers, technical presentations, technical reports. So any publication that any of you guys ever get involved with, make sure it's documented, make sure you keep it together, keep that information. There is a section on LinkedIn that says featured, and you can add publications to the featured section too, and it kind of shows up as a little mini portfolio for you. So these are things to keep in mind. And then when you look down farther on this table of contents, research funding sources, that's where the grant writing comes in. And this person has 2 pages of that, which is amazing. Research contracts, consulting activity, 49, I got to add that to mine. Professional service, page 50 to 52. And then university and community service, 52 to 57. So that's a lot. University and community service, there's a bunch in there. And then you get a teaching summary too. So a lot of people get asked as you're a teacher, like, what's your teaching theory? What's your teaching model? How do you teach? Course history, he's got 3 pages of course history, and then television and news media, which goes out to page 68 and goes on from there. So this thing just goes on and on and on. So the formatting, this is where we tell you the formatting on a curriculum vitae doesn't matter. So we have blue ink and it's in a gray header, which is totally fine. On a resume, we're going to say absolutely not, don't do any of this. They use different formats. So we got UNLV, but they list all the different information and the dates that are under UNLV. We got Blast Containment Incorporated. We got University of Delaware. So this was a professional position. Then this is where I mentioned earlier about teaching. And when you list teaching, like a lot of people have taught like an online class, or they might teach one class at CSN while they work at UNLV. So this is where visiting and temporary positions pop up too. So this person did some Army research, and then you get into education. So we got PhD, Masters of Science, Bachelor's of Science, and then this is where I think this one gets a little impressive too, is the honors and awards, education awards. So it lists 30 that are on there. So you get all this different information that's on there. Research awards, we have 11 on there, which is amazing. Professional awards, 10. Design awards, here's what's really impressive about this. So design awards, 85. So I don't even think all of them are listed on here because they didn't have, or they left some off, but there is a ton, or maybe they are listed. Yep, they're all listed on here. So robotics awards and all this, and then it just keeps going on and on and on. So we get to graduate student supervision committee. So this lists the students that this person is on a graduate committee with, and then this goes on and on. So we got master students directed. So 54 total students directed, which is another way of quantifiable information really showing off. If this person on their curriculum vitae just listed master students directed and didn't put that number out there, you'd be like, okay, that's cool. But you see 54 and you're like, what the heck? That's very impressive that they assisted that many. And then visiting students that they assisted with too, there's 33 listed on there. Graduate student committees, 132. So what really made this impressive, and the reason why I like showing this one, is that they use quantitative numbers. So using those numbers out there gives you a real sense of how busy this person was and how much they have done over their career. And it goes on and on and on. It's going to page 77. I'm not going that far. So I'm going to stop there on this. And then we got time now too to refer back to the group for any other questions.
All right, now it's a great time to ask questions, guys. Please, you can unmute yourself or type them in the chat. Thank you so much, Dr. Vetter, for getting all this information out, and then in such a short amount of time too. Thank you so much. It was great.
No problem, man. It's fun. I like doing it.
Thanks, Dr. Vetter. Did pretty good. Got some good tip points, especially on like not going over two or three pages. Try to keep it condensed as possible. And a 10-year, especially the 10-year period. I didn't think about that.
Yep.
I have a question in the chat that directly chatted me, said, are CVs used outside of academia? Are there any times that they're being used?
Great question. And I mentioned that earlier when I was talking too. So that's where I think when you're in sciences, biology, chemistry, anything related to that, I think that's where a curriculum vitae really plays a better role than a resume actually does too. I've got a friend, he's in Texas. He's got his degree in biology, just a bachelor's, but he's been working for Texas Parks and Wildlife for 30 years, studying the same little tiny cute fish. That's what he's been doing. His curriculum vitae, because he had to get away from a resume, has got all these different projects that they've done with these fish on tracking them and doing them. So if he was ever looking for a job, he's not. I think his curriculum vitae is like 25 pages, but it's projects, conferences, and things like that. And he's on the science side. But that's when you're applying for a job too. On the chemistry world too, the chemistry world gets into so many different projects and things. It's like, how do you explain those? If you're doing 10 or 15 different lab experience in a year, how do you explain 10 or 15 of those on a resume? You can't. So that's where I think when you get into those sciences and those things, that's where curriculum vitae can help. Even for some people that are engineers, when you look at engineering people, if they're working on like molecular engineering, if they're working on like anything with like NASA and you're working in those types of industries too, a resume is not going to do the job. You're going to need to use a curriculum vitae because there's so many things that you do.
Thank you so much for that answer. Any other questions before we end today's session? Please feel free to ask. All right, I have another question. What are the most important parts to a resume and CV that in a quick look over by the reviewer, it would immediately make or break the application?
So make it like not good?
I think that's what they imply.
So if it's handed to somebody, it can really be like any type of format. If it's not following like the rules of electronic scanning, that's going to kick the resume out. So that would be the one way. I can't think of a way where a resume would ever like not get looked at. It's basically if the format is not good and stuff is all over the place and it looks like it wasn't really thought out, that would be the one where somebody's going to look at there and be like, they didn't put enough effort into it to make it look good. That would be another example of it getting. And so that goes back to formatting. For the information in a resume too, I think they're all going to get read or looked at by a person no matter what. I think a curriculum vitae, for it to like not be good, is not having research interest on there. That it doesn't matter what discipline you're doing, whether it's education or science, not having research interest on a curriculum vitae is going to be a killer. It's going to knock it out. They're going to be like, if you're not doing anything, why do I want to hire you to not do anything with me? So that's kind of where that thought process comes from. That's a tough question. I never really thought about a resume, like what would be the worst part of it too, but scanning, follow our format. So in person, kind of do what you want, but have the format look really logical and really thought out, because people can tell. I can look at a resume in 5 minutes and tell you if you spent 5 minutes on it or an hour. I can tell you right away. It's not hard. So great question, man.
All right. Thank you so much. And I don't think I see any other questions, and there are people that want to ask more questions. So before we end, just one last question, I guess. Is it possible to send us the slides and CV?
Yep.
Okay.
I can send it to you, and I'll put this in the chat too. So if they need anything.
All right, great. And everybody, thank you so much for being here. And before we end today's session, we would like to thank to our presenter, Dr. Vetter, for sharing their time and expertise with us today, and thank to our participants for being here and attending this workshop. If you have quick moment, please fill out the survey that I just dropped in the chat. It helps us improve the workshops that we provide for you guys. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Vetter, for being here and sharing your expertise with us. We'll see you guys in the next workshop.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
See you guys.